When the G20 leaders' joint statement was published, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry stated that it was nothing to be proud of and criticized the passages referring to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Oleg Nikolenko, a spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, criticized the declaration for not specifically mentioning Russia. Nikolenko posted on Facebook, "It is obvious that the presence of the Ukrainian side would have allowed the participants to better comprehend the situation." While Russia pressed for a grain deal in the joint G20 declaration that would eliminate the prohibition on some Russian banks from the international SWIFT bank payment system, an advisor to Volodymyr Zelensky's office cautioned about the ramifications of relaxing sanctions against Russia. Even the slightest lifting of sanctions on Russia or any discussions suggesting such an option have consequences, Mikhailo Podolyak said on Twitter. G20 adopted a consensus declaration on issues facing the bloc after some disagreement over the wording on the war in Ukraine. Western countries had pushed for strong condemnation of Russia while Russia blocked a compromise that was acceptable otherwise for everyone else, an EU diplomat told Reuters. The wording on the Ukraine portion of the declaration noted the different views and assessments on Russia's war on the country, but underscored that all states must act in a manner consistent with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter in its entirety. In order to guarantee immediate and unhindered deliveries of grain, food, and fertilizers from Russia and Ukraine, it asked for their timely and effective execution. Russia abandoned the Black Sea Grain Agreement in July, which had been negotiated by the UN and Turkey to assure the secure transportation of goods into and out of Ukraine. Since then, Russia has frequently bombarded Ukrainian ports and grain warehouses. The President and Defense Minister said on Saturday that new drone fragments, identical to those used by the Russian military, had been discovered on Romanian soil. This is the second such find this week. As a result of an uptick in fighting close to the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, has issued a warning regarding a potential threat to nuclear safety. The largest nuclear power station in Europe has been the site of multiple explosions, according to the IAEA, the United Nations nuclear watchdog. After meeting with Yoshimasa Hayashi, the Japanese foreign minister, in Kyiv on Saturday, Volodymyr Zelensky announced that he had agreed to start bilateral discussions with Japan about security guarantees. Mikhailo Podolyak, a counselor to Volodymyr Zelensky's office head, repeated that there can be no talk of lifting sanctions against Russia as the G20 conference was already underway in Delhi. Even the slightest lifting of sanctions on Russia or any discussions suggesting such an option have consequences, Podolyak said on Twitter. This directly incentivizes Russia to continue active combat operations, prolong the conflict, drag it out, and even escalate the war. It provokes even more extensive use of genocidal and terrorist practices, such as intensifying missile attacks on civilian populations. It is a direct abandonment of a return to international law. Podolyak tweeted this as Russia pushed for the lifting of some sanctions in G20 talks around grain exports. The joint declaration called for the timely and effective implementation to ensure immediate and unimpeded deliveries of grain, foodstuff and fertilizers from Ukraine and Russia. Today, Russia declared that it would not budge from its demands for the resumption of the Black Sea grain trade, particularly the reconnection of a state agricultural bank, not a subsidiary of the bank suggested by the UN, to the global SWIFT bank payment system. The exclusion of a few Russian banks from the global SWIFT bank payment system was one of the sanctions the European Union and other Western nations placed on Russia in 2022. In order to maintain the secure transportation of goods from and to Ukraine, a major agricultural hub known as the breadbasket of Europe, Russia withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Agreement in July. This agreement had been mediated by the UN and Turkey. Russia has frequently targeted Ukrainian ports and grain storage facilities since ending the grain arrangement. The compromised unified statement made by G20 leaders regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine was deemed nothing to be proud of by the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. When the declaration made references to states acting in a way that was not consistent with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter in its entirety and states abstaining from threat or use of force to seek territorial acquisition against territorial integrity and sovereignty or political independence of any state, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson Oleg Nikolenko criticized the declaration for not specifically mentioning Russia. It is obvious that the Ukrainian side's participation would have improved the participants' comprehension of the issue.